I think we're on the air, okay? So, I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the Public Arts Commission of the City of Palm Springs, California for Thursday, April 12th, 2018. Ms. Henning, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, good afternoon. Commissioner Brenner?
Here.
Commissioner Gladstone?
Here.
Commissioner Murray?
Here.
Commissioner Merrigan? Here. Commissioner Pritchard?
Here.
Chair Sheffer?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Good. May I have a motion to accept the agenda?
Madam Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the agenda as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Don't fight you. There's more things to do. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We're going to move to public comments. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Public Arts Commission on items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Public Arts Commission, and agenda items if the member of the public cannot be present later in the meeting at the time the item is heard by the Commission. Additionally, members of the public may address the Commission on each item listed on the posted agenda at the time each item is heard. Although the Public Arts Commission values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda, and 5 minutes is assigned for each speaker. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak? Okay. Then. Oh, sorry. Come, please sit down and tell us your name and spell it for the lady who does the minutes. Yeah.
Is it on now? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
My name is Luis Castro, Luizcastro, and I'm here to drop in regarding public art murals. I've met Richard previously last year towards the end, and he had spoken to me about the red tape sort of coming down regarding murals and, Palm Springs looking forward to more projects around the city. So I have painted murals in Cathedral City, Coachella, all the way stretching out to Salton Sea, and I would very much like to be involved here in Palm Springs, being a local resident, for the past decade.
Very good. We have a new subcommittee that's looking at murals and temporary art. So if you want to make sure that they have your information, starting with Russell, I think. Yep. Do you want to?
Yeah, I do have Luis's contact, and it was during the time that we were doing the rewriting of the mural ordinance. So now that we've got that in place, I told Luis we're moving forward with our mural program, so we'll definitely be in touch.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting of March 8th, 2018? You did that so well. You're in Tom's spot. I think you should do it.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the minutes from the March 8th meeting as written.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Okay, we have no presentations, but if you'll remember, last month as a presentation, because they hadn't been on the agenda, the Palm Springs Cultural Center presented their idea for a temporary mural called Jump for Joy by Iola Baker. And so because of the timing with the application and our meetings, et cetera, we have put them on the agenda today, but I've asked them really just to do an update because we got the full story last month. And certainly if anyone has any questions, please ask them. But why don't you come up and present to us.
So again, I'm Michael Green from the...
And you have to
we'll
speak
share it.
sort of right into it.
Okay. Michael Green from the Palm Springs Cultural Center, and Mary Bloom, my associate. we are just going to give you an update and let you ask us questions if you have them, give you kind of a status report on where we are with the project. I think that's it. We did have something that'll be on screen. I think you already have the materials about the mural. We'll start at the end of it because obviously we don't need to go through the whole thing again with you.
Thank you for having us back. First of all, we took your advice, and it was very good advice last time. Someone had suggested that we do a test. What a great idea. So we have done so. We wanted to, first of all, lend you some confidence that we are working with one of the best printers in the Valley, Planet Printworks. They work with Palm Springs Life, Modernism Week, Fashion Week, the Palm Springs Art Museum, so they are very adept in terms of fine art. They're also very adept in terms of outdoor art, whether that be signage, building hoarding for developers, or exhibition, outdoor exhibition didactics. So they are working with us and doing some research in terms of the paper we should be using and the type of print we should be using. So we're very fortunate to have them on board. In terms of, if we could just go to the next slide, I just wanted to show you an example of a previous mural. And if we look closely, it's important that we understand that the mural, for lack of a better description, is almost paper mache'd onto the wall. So don't be worried if you see paper or you hear paper, first of all. And secondly, you see that you can actually feel and see the building in detail behind that paper. So you can see exactly the cinder block and where there are, bubbles on the building, etc. That's part of the artwork, and that's part of the beauty of it. So if you look at our next slide, sorry, can we turn to the next slide, just so they can see? Thank you very much. Here's our test. So this is the exact wall on the Palm Springs Cultural Center. We're testing 4 different kinds of papers that have been recommended to us, as well as 3 kinds of UV coatings. The test, we literally did it the day after our last meeting, so it's the better part of a month now. And the test has gone very well. 2 of the papers are exceptionally good. She uses standard wheat glue to affix the paper to the building. And 2 of the papers, I think it's a 36-pound and a 24-pound paper, which is nice and readily available, is working best. It is, in terms of the sun exposure, there's actually 0 degradation, at least to the naked eye. The wheat glue is holding up beautifully. We've also done a little bit of a water test, and it's holding up exactly as we had anticipated. Now, it's a 30-day test. It is what it is, right? But we're very happy with it. In terms of the UV coatings, we're using 3 different ones, and they're, again, to the naked eye, there is no difference at all. And then finally, just as an addition to the information that we provided you last time, Eola has done, as you know, these murals before, and one in Vancouver was in the downtown east side, and that was very specific to a homeless neighborhood and a neighborhood of known for drug addiction and disadvantaged. If there's any interest in more information on that, we can certainly provide it to you. But this was an extremely successful mural, and I know there has been some sort of ad hoc conversation about doing that here in Palm Springs as well. So we're more than happy to provide you with more detail on that. And with that, any questions?
Yes, I have a question about the resident participation in photographic or photography sessions. How would we orchestrate getting any members of our community in touch with the artist to participate in this?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. This is open to the public, and it's very important that we reach the widest diversity of people possible. So everyone welcome. People can simply email us. I'm not going to remember the email address. Give me a second. I have to cheat. It's jumpforjoy@psculturalcenter.org, and we will schedule a photo session. If people, for whatever reason, can't email, if you could give me that information, and we will be in touch. We are more than happy to do so. She's can photograph for about another 3 weeks.
So would you anticipate doing a photo session that would have a number of people, or are these individual?
She typically doesn't do group photos only because it's hard to get several people to jump at the exact same time.
Oh, no, I mean, just if you got like 12 people at the site for 2
Yes,
hour
then she
period.
will do 12 separate.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. She's done that with the Girl Guides here and fire
fun.
teams, et cetera. So absolutely. Thank
And
you.
I think we can, we're doing more and more social media, and I think we can add that in as, to let people know about it. And I'm sure the Cultural Center's putting it out to all of their people.
We would love that.
And we
But,
do have flyers, printed flyers as well, that we're happy to share with you.
Good. We had a project a year or two ago that involved photography of people, and they set up a booth at the Village Fest and found a lot of people. Without photographing there, if you might consider handing out your flyers. And I'm not exactly sure the process, Jennifer, of getting permission to do something at the Village Fest, but, I mean, it wouldn't be that hard, right? They could, can you tell them who to call, just to,
Yeah, I can share with you who to contact to get the proper forms to schedule a
If-
photography shoot.
no, but if they just wanted to hand out their flyers, could they do it in conjunction with someone who has a table or something? Can we-
I could find out.
Okay. But it did attract a lot of attention by being set up in the middle of the fest.
Yeah, no doubt.
Anyone else have any comments or questions?
I have one comment. I've actually heard about your project around town, just not by chance with people, so I just wanted to let you know that, so people are talking about it. Yeah.
Which is
One thing
great.
that I don't think we spent a lot of time on last month, but I did want to mention, there is another dimension to the program, and it is the blog that's done. Each person that jumps also fills out a questionnaire about the experience, and then EOLA publishes that on the blog with the picture of the person who jumped. And it's a really beautiful thing if you have the opportunity. I'm going to have to cheat and look again too, but to give you the address. Oh, okay, good. But it'll give you a much broader picture of the social implications that the program has in terms of how people are affected by it.
It's
Okay.
Jump for Joy Project
right.
.wordpress.com.
Very good. And I'm going to ask Commissioner Brenner if we can make sure that Madalena knows.
I am making notes even as we speak.
Very good. And then what's happened on some of the postings is any of the commissioners who are on Facebook have reposted things, and we've really reached a lot of people that way. And there will be a report from Commissioner Brenner, but the number of people looking at our posts has just grown exponentially. So I think it'll turn out to be a good way to do this. So I would like to propose that, because we've had 2 presentations now from this group, and the timing is a little bit off. There's a copy of their application with your agenda. The one step that hasn't been done is the notifying of property owners within 500 feet 10 days before it is voted on by the commission. But I would like to propose that we conditionally approve it today based on the mural itself and the merits of it, and that at the next meeting, we put on the agenda the resolution that we'll send to the city council. So we don't need to ask them to come back again. So if someone is comfortable making that motion, that based on the mural itself, that we as an Arts Commission approve it, and then we'll do the sort of the final stamp of approval next month.
Do they need to be here for us to vote on
No.
it at all?
No. I think that if we have a sense of the meeting or a motion, whatever you feel comfortable with, that next month on the agenda will simply be the resolution that we usually vote that we send to the city council. And then it will go to the city council after that. But that way it'll have lots of notice. And if someone did wish to come while we vote on the resolution itself, there would be time for them to do it.
So just to be clear, if we conditionally approve it now, we would still need to approve it at that next meeting?
Maybe conditionally is the wrong answer. I think as far as approving it as a mural, that we can do that today. Voting on a resolution to send it to the city council we'll do next month when the last notices have gone out. Does someone?
Give it a shot. All right, so I'd like to move that we approve the mural project number 18-002, presented by the Palm Springs Cultural Center at 2100 East Hawkwitz Way. We need more than that?
I think that's fine. Jump for
Oh,
Joy.
Jump for Joy is the title, yes.
May I have a second?
The motion.
Is there any discussion of this motion to approve it? Which, by the way, is what our role is, just to approve the mural.
Not a question, well, I guess a question, and if I'm out of order, Madam Chairman,
Always
let
get
me
to
know.
discuss a motion.
And I guess I'm just thinking aloud, I apologize. Because of this mural, this project, has it driven audience participation to the cultural center? Have you seen a,
Well, it's not done yet.
well, I mean,
Yeah, so.
do you anticipate?
We absolutely anticipate that this will turn the cultural center into a destination beyond movies. That was one of the objectives, absolutely. But we have also seen, just in this project thus far, just with the photography, like I say this very sincerely, it warms my heart to be going to the American Documentary Film Festival and to other events that we have had as a cultural center and see people who have participated in the photo sessions now come to the cultural center. So we're starting to be recognized as this hub for arts and culture and not just film. And that has been wonderful for us.
Well, I see a Guinness Book of Record, maybe a group, 1,000 or so people jumping. I don't know.
Okay, any other discussion? Then there's a motion to approve the Jump for Joy mural. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, thank you. And so I'd like to ask Ms. Henning to prepare that resolution for the next meeting that we will vote on officially and send to the city council.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming again. Okay, we now have three reports from the subcommittees that we set up.
Madam Chair, actually, the budget's next. It was taken out of order, so the minutes will reflect that item B3 was addressed before item B2. So we're just waiting
B2.
for the, you have a draft copy of the agenda as it states right
Oh.
there. So we're waiting for the Finance Director, Jeffrey Keel, to be here.
Could we then postpone it till he gets here?
We should wait for him. I know he's working on agenda items. I'm texting him right now. So,
Okay, I don't think that we should stop the meeting, though.
Well,
We
I'm
can come
happy
back to it whenever.
Get everyone started on this until Director Keel shows up.
Could I would like to propose to the commission that we hold the budget discussion until after we've had the subcommittee reports, because each committee has been thinking about budget. And so I think
Understood.
that we will have a much better discussion afterwards. And I think we can change the agenda by consent of the committee, so I would like to propose that. I think that stopping the discussions that we've sort of started to talk about the budget will be less effective than if we wait till we've had the reports. Is there anyone who objects to that? Okay, so if that's all right, and maybe you can tell him, you know, we'll do it later. We also, okay, it's just that I've heard from several of the subcommittees that their deliberations included some ideas about budget. So I think talking first, but we will get to it, I promise. And it was on the agenda at the end, to be fair. I didn't know that it had been changed. Okay. What I wanted to say is that the three subcommittee reports are about programs for the next year. One of them is several subcommittees have asked if we couldn't have a study session between now and the next meeting to flesh out some of these ideas. Also, Commissioner Pritchard and I attended the meeting about the downtown park, and the park designers, Rios Clementi, indicated that they would love to come and talk to us about their ideas for what should go in the park. So I have been in touch with them, and a day that they could come to Palm Springs is April 26th, which is 2 weeks from today. And if we combine that with a study session, I think we could address a lot of all these things at once. So I just like an informal sense of how many people could, if anyone has a problem with that date. It's a Thursday at 4.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't know that I can make it, or if I get there, it might be, again, late like it was last time.
Okay,
I'm unable to attend.
okay. Now, I can try, if we said the following Thursday, is that still a problem? Is it because it's Thursday or because it's just because it's springtime? I'm happy to go back with them with some other dates. Is there a day of the week? All right. Okay, I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
we'll come back to it at the
Yeah.
end. But I just keep it in mind that if we could have a study session, and if we could combine it with meeting with the people about the park. Good afternoon. Hi. I apologize. The agenda was changed from the one I had, and if you would take a couple of minutes to sort of explain where we are in the budget process. I do feel that each of the subcommittees has been thinking about it, so at the end, I think would be a better time for us to discuss what our request would be, if that's okay.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank
And I
you.
apologize for it's agenda day and all that.
Yes, no,
Nice to-
I was just surprised to see that you were able to come.
Nice
so.
to finally meet all of you. So I am Jeffrey Keel. I'm the Director of Finance and Treasurer. And you have two sheets in front of you. They're essentially the same thing. This one is a little bit more detailed version. I heard some people like to see more detail, and this is what typically gets presented to the city council when we take your budget there. So where we are in the process is we have the best information in the budget that's available as of now, which isn't entirely great information because there's so much yet to happen in this fiscal year. And in next fiscal year, we're going to have negotiations going on, so that impacts salaries and benefits. We also have some of the allocated items. This special charges line, which is mainly for insurances. That's that 16,000 is the share of $3 million that gets charged to the city overall, and then it gets allocated to various departments and funds. And we're in the process of having, our broker is seeking renewals for all the insurances. That will occur either late in May or in June. And all of this is subject to change as far as ending balances, which affects what's available for next year.
Right.
So I know that your focus typically is on what's available for acquisition of art. And so what you're seeing here is our best guesstimate. Just so you know, all of these numbers end up changing over the months, and we end up closing the books on this fiscal year at the end of September. So it's that far off until you even know what that number is. And then based upon what those revenues are, we may adjust the revenue projection for the next year. It's a moving target.
Right. And I noticed that we've used the same projection, and the last time I saw the numbers for this year, we were at about 105 out of 190. So
Yeah.
I think it's anybody's guess.
Yeah, and it's quite subject to what's happening with various developments. within the city.
Exactly. And that brings me to a request that I've made a couple of times, but that's really hindering us from doing planning, and that is we need to know what developers have paid into the fund and how much, because in some cases they are going to ask for reimbursement, and we need to know what the scale of that money is. I think that there's one case that goes back a number of years, but from 2015 to halfway through 2018, if we could have, I mean, I've seen printouts that say somebody paid $2,500. We need to know who paid that, because they have the right to come back to propose a work of art and to ask. And before we decide how much we can spend on art, and particularly for the downtown park, which we're very eager to do, it would really help to just know that just for the last 2 years, because I suspect that there have been some developments in the last 2 years.
Well, let me speak to that question, because that's been an ongoing topic for 2 years. And we have multiple departments involved. And I'll just tell you candidly, there's never been a system in place to track that. So we literally do not know by development what has been paid. There is no master list. And we've been trying to work on getting that information. It's really getting into the weeds to find it, and someone is going to have to pour through hundreds of documents. And really, this is a history that goes back more than a couple of years. It goes back, like for Ascena, when this whole issue came up a couple of years ago,
Right.
where they came forward and were asking for reimbursement. We're kind of like, well, how much have they paid? And for a decade, they've
Right.
been paying.
Right.
And no one
Well-
had the ability to go back and say, this is what it was. There was no system for tracking it. So we're trying to get our arms around
When
that.
someone pays their building fees, surely it, the check comes from someone,
Yeah, but it goes into a revenue account
right?
that is for all building fees. There isn't compartments within that,
But for example, you would know who's paid building fees, right?
but I'm saying someone needs to go back and find the original documents, because when it gets recorded in the system as revenue, there isn't for, I'm talking about, well over a decade.
Right.
Maybe 20 years. There's no notation that's being made that can be pulled up electronically to say, this is who paid that fee. There's just a lump sum for the day's activity on what came in.
So how do you
But it must be
confirm
ascribed
that
to the-
someone's paying the fee?
We need to go back to the detailed source documents in our files, and also if they can present documents or evidentiary of what they had paid. that helps. It's a twofold way of
But
validating.
in general, if someone pays their building fees, you keep track of that, right? I mean, overall, they've
Oh.
paid their fees or they haven't, right?
Yeah, yes,
So-
overall, and neither Jay or I are from that department, so can
Well,
you speak
I
to
would
that?
just say the end result being that developer receives their permit is their objective. So they've made the payment, city has accepted it.
Right.
Developer receives permit, and I think at that point, what happens with the information is the question. It's on a piece of paper. I think there's a worksheet form that says how much is paid in each
Right, I've seen those, yeah.
compartment, as Director Keel has put it. And then a check for the entire amount is deposited.
Right.
Correct? And it could be for multiple applications of permits for the same developer. Now, that being said, I think in the past, what we've done is asked developers requesting repayment of public art fees for projects. I think we've actually asked them to provide us with what they've paid, then we can verify it.
And it's
How-
easier for us to find those
Right.
documents in our records when they say, here, I paid this dollar amount, because then at least you can search on a dollar amount or a
Right.
date.
Isn't
Well,
there a
what about-
percentage?
It's a
How do you
half a
fig-
percent for commercial and a quarter of a percent. How did Michael Braun know exactly? Did he have to come down and look through all the, he did,
Provided he.
kept
um,
track? Yeah,
Someone from his office had to come down, sit through, and go through all of his permits. And he provided us with a stack of permits, which
Okay.
we then had to tally up.
how about,
But
The-
he already had the stack,
right,
you're saying. So if we would have had to go search for all those
No.
documents, that would have taken an enormous amount of staff
Right.
time just to find
No.
those documents, so you could filter through the short stack, if you
how
will,
about,
right?
how about this? Could you look through your files and give us the names, or give them to Jay, of the 5 largest commercial developers, and, you know, and then if
Actually, we
they've
have
paid
that.
in hundreds of thousands of dollars, then we know that even the 0.5% or 1/4% is worth pursuing. I'm just concerned that there are 1 or 2 or 3 hotels or residential developments that will have, or will either
Yes.
have or will soon.
You
Okay.
are quite correct. And Jennifer has a list of
Oh,
those
good. Well,
developments.
if we could have that, that would be super.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to frame this as an opportunity for us, because if we can talk to those developers as they're making their plans, it's a good potential partnership for us
Right.
to know
Right.
what people have paid in and would really benefit from it. And if we could work with them, quite often it just seems like, you know, they're just finding a piece of metal from, you know, to
Well,
put in front of their
right,
place, where we
exactly.
can kind of weigh in and help. So, I mean, for us, it's an opportunity,
Well-
less like you're gonna take the money, but more
Right.
an opportunity
And one
for us.
of the things I heard from developmental services was that often they know in their dealings, if the intention is for them to install artwork
Right.
on their own, or if they intend, we're just paying the in
Right.
lieu fee, and then that goes right
Right,
into
exactly.
your
And we just need
balance.
to know,
Yes.
simply the ones that have, accumulated enough to be significant. I do know, I've talked to the developers of the Dream Hotel.
Yes.
And they're thinking along those lines.
And so Dream is like top of our list.
Okay,
for
and they
that,
are
right.
probably keeping track.
Yes.
But they want to talk before they finish.
Yes.
And that's what we would like to do.
Yes.
So if there's anybody else, close to the Dream level of, we don't need to
Well, we
know everybody who paid it.
Marilyn was one of the other
Yes.
projects.
Marilyn, and they actually have an approved project, which was pretty cool back when they went through the approval process as Avalon. And it's actually a piece by Philip K. Smith. So it will be interesting to see which, if Marilyn, the current developers, will continue on and perhaps pursue that piece being
Now, is-
fabricated or doing something else.
Is that, what year was that approved? Like
06.
Bec-
It's a pretty amazing piece by Philip, which,
Which is,
It is a
which
gate-
is great.
It is a gated
However,
community.
however,
You
it
get
didn't
our
mean-
dilemma.
right, no, but you get our dilemma, I hope.
Yes.
Because
Oh,
we would like to,
absolutely.
we are
You want a
prepared.
plan.
That's right, we're
Yes.
prepared, we would like to do
Yes.
something significant in the downtown park.
Yes.
But if there's money that's earmarked for something.
Yes.
Then we have to know that. And it's really hobbling us in
Yes.
terms of planning. And
We understand exactly what you're feeling, because
But
we feel it ourselves as
apparently,
we're trying to.
you do have enough information to get us started. So if we could
Well,
have
and
that,
I'll
that would
just,
be
I'll
helpful.
just tell you, so, idealistically, you would have the revenues based upon a flow of anticipated funds, based upon the projects in the pipeline, those that have already paid in the recent years, and the ones that are in the process and expecting to pay. We're not there, and I don't know if we'll be there for months, really. So what I did was I prepared the revenue projection based upon flow of funds trends on what we've been seeing.
Okay.
And you did pick up how I did make a little tweak on what was paid last year in 16-17. We had an unusually large influx, and that isn't continuing. So we're back to actually something lower than the revenue estimate that was set
Right.
for last year, even though the 16-17 numbers blew right through them.
Right. Well, I was thinking, perhaps we should project at $100,000 and be pleasantly surprised. But the main thing that we need to know is this possible balance of $435,000.
Well,
That's your best
Yes.
guess right now.
And then I'll direct your attention to this number in the third column, 360,000. That's basically a plug number to have the third column's estimated balance come to zero. So that's the target we're working with, and that would be the best number you have to work with, knowing there are other obligations.
But-
And let me also mention one other thing. This is not just for, the artwork acquisition. This is anything for the
Right,
whole
for the
program.
programs, and that's
So-
what we're gonna
so
talk
one-
about, but-
One of the things I'll note for you, under personnel costs, you can see how the budget was 77 for this year. The projected is 94, and next year's projected is 79. The difference there is, my understanding is the commission has asked Jennifer to go on some days that she's normally not here, where there's events. So she is budgeted as a half-time person right now. So however that process occurs, I'm not familiar with.
Right. No,
But
I-
I can just tell you it happens.
No,
So-
we
so
do
the-
understand,
so
and
the So the budget right now for next year is assuming that none of that is happening, just so you're aware of what is there.
All we want to know is how much of the $360,000 is owed to, it's potentially owed, and within the next year or two, to developers who have legitimately paid in and either have a piece that's approved or are going to. Because if you don't tell us, we're going to spend it. And then when they come for the money, there's not going to be any. Because we don't know, so we can't save the money.
Well, and this is what we've been dealing with all day long.
I'm
This
sure.
issue.
Well, I realize
This
that we
issue.
have this is a funny little budget in the middle of all of your
No,
budgets.
and I
It's-
know, $225 million budget.
Right.
My world stopped to deal with this. So.
Well, we're
But,
grateful.
again, it came up, like I say, it came up 2 years ago too with Ascena, when the developer presented a request for
Right.
reimbursement. It led to an agreement on how they would get some funds, and Ascena is an ongoing issue.
And what
as you know.
happened to that agreement?
It's been completed. They were.
We haven't paid them any, have we? I'm just, I mean, we really need to know
need to
what.
know.
Yes.
Jennifer, you,
Sure.
okay.
Well, at this point, I don't believe we have
Paid
made any
anything.
payments to them. And it may be a case of the city taking one particular position that that agreement is no longer in force versus the developer who I believe was, went into bankruptcy. The property had transferred to another owner, and now the original developer may be back in the picture, claiming that they have a right to the
Right.
funds. It's
Right.
convoluted.
But I just want to know, we have not in fact paid any money.
But at this
Right.
point, we're taking
I'm
the
sorry.
stand that we don't owe anything.
Right, but
How
No,
much
we-
money is it?
$180,000
Um,
about. It's 180 about is what
Yeah.
they started with as
The
a,
development continues to pay fees.
Right.
Yet, so even as they're continuing to pay fees, they can come forward to collect the
Right.
fees that are being paid.
and it would be nice to know just how much they've paid since 2015, let's say. Acina, because they are going to come and ask us. So, it just
we-
would be
we-
helpful
we
for
would-
planning.
We would definitely like to know also.
Okay.
Well,
But
let's
with
get it
one,
done.
one name, or, half a dozen names, perhaps it wouldn't be that hard to just, or,
Yeah.
just add up what they've paid in building fees, and we know that 0.5% or 1/4% was for art.
We're working with our colleagues to do that.
Okay, we
It's
appreciate
not in
it,
my-
thank you.
It's not in my department.
Right, no, we
So we're-
appreciate it, thank
yeah.
you. And my understanding is that we have one more of our meetings to to sort of firm up our budget request, and that it won't go to council till early June. Is
Yeah,
that,
yes, it will go on June 4th.
okay,
4th or
we meet on
6th,
May,
right. 6th,
we
June
meet
6th.
on May
First meeting.
10th
Yes.
next.
yes.
So I think we will try to have our request in.
Okay.
Because this is, we're going to break out this,
Well, the other thing, the
unallocated.
other thing to consider is that, artwork doesn't get acquired overnight. So, even if we were to say, let's just say, work with a budget amount of 250,000, I'm just throwing that out there. It may take all fiscal year to deal with that. It may slip over into the next year. I know these are
So
very.
the downtown park,
complex.
which Russell and I went to a meeting the other day,
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to break ground in January, and we're trying to have an idea of what the artwork will be before they start, or as they start, so that it's part of it. So that is one particular item that we need to budget for.
Yes. Well, budget is not a precise science.
Right.
And,
We're-
I'm actually better at budgeting than I am in accounting. But
It's more fun anyway,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's kind of weird, but I would have you be looking at the $200 to $250
$1,000 of our
$250,000
budget
range,
that we
okay?
can
I just don't
spend.
want you to leave you in the dark for a
Right.
month.
No,
So
that's-
if I were you, I would work with that. And then
Okay.
if it ends up being higher or lower. So like I tell the Measure J Commission, because they're dealing with, 13 million a year. And it's all based upon, what's happening with sales tax. And every penny that comes in for Measure J goes to that Measure J fund. And so I'm like watching that stuff like a hawk. And I said to them, as you're making your recommendations to council, shoot beyond where you want to be and recommend a list beyond what you think you have money for to fund. So if really good news comes in, you've already let your wishes be
Great.
made known, if that makes sense.
And I
then
think
if you kind of
that's-
prioritize based upon what is your number 1, 2, 3 priorities, that's a good way of doing it also.
Okay.
Does that help?
And again, this is, I realize we're probably one of just 2 commissions that have their own budget that's non-expiring and stuff.
Yes.
So we, I apologize, but we seem to have a sort of activist commission at the moment that's dying to get going and do some projects.
That's great.
And so,
That's nothing to apologize for.
except that we really just need whatever numbers you
Yes.
do know. I mean, if you have a list of we need to know, and we would appreciate it, and we will do our best to budget what. I mean, I understand we don't know what the balance will be, we don't know what will come in, but we have to have a range because we are going to spend something fairly quickly because it's timely. So
Okay,
anything you can tell us will be very helpful.
okay.
Thank
Well, I
you.
believe I heard the range of 200,000 to 250,000 would be a
Right,
safe
but we
area to plan with.
would like to know what is potentially owed to developers.
Yes.
Because they really, I mean, if you read the ordinance, that's what our commission is set up to do, is to
Yes.
work with developers to get art in public spaces of
Yes.
these developments. A lot of the other things that we want to do are actually not in our ordinance. And so they would have to come sort of if there's money left over.
Yes.
So that's what we just want to know is those people, as you said, who pay in with no expectation because they just built a dozen houses or something.
Well, we also know there have been some that have the right to ask for reimbursement but have not.
Right.
And
It just may not be enough
we
or
don't,
they're not
we don't
interested.
have an expiration date right now.
And
That's
that's
what I
actually
was-
something
that's
I
what
was
I was
thinking
gonna
of
ask.
proposing.
Yeah.
So
There ought to be a
so that-
statute of
and-
limitations.
And Jay alluded to, the issue of when one developer gets transferred to another developer, we have a stance on successorship rights.
Right.
And, that can be challenged legally, so.
No, I understand, and
that's
it's
another
it is
wild
very
card.
complicated.
I don't want to say too much since this is being recorded.
Right. No, but we have just been sort of in the dark, so
Yes.
this is already very helpful.
Yes, good,
It's,
thank you.
and
Well,
we
you
appreciate
guys are
your
doing-
coming.
You are doing a great job in helping make
I'd like
us
to
a
just,
beautiful city.
I'd like to use this opportunity to say something. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying this and putting this together very clearly. I would just like to use this opportunity to say that I think the revenue that we're receiving is just so terribly small for any city worth anything, especially one with a cultural heritage like Palm Springs. 1/4% is insulting and obscene, especially, sorry, I'm just, it's just,
It's for residential.
it's for
There's
residential.
a 0.5%
half
for
a percent.
commercial.
Yeah,
Half
but
of
still.
1% is still really terrible. And, I hope maybe we can talk about some ways to address this issue. I'm seeing major stores opening downtown. A cup of coffee at some of these stores if every 20th person donated a cup of coffee to the Public Art Commission, we'd have a really beautiful park. We'd have really nice things for kids. But the other thing I'd like to draw out in terms of math is just that I just wanted to say, right now, our budget was budgeted, our personnel costs at 30% of our expenses. And the projected is actually 41% of our expenses. Now, I work in the nonprofit world, but that is a very, very high number. And I would like to see it more in line with the 13% that is the preliminary budget, which would mean that I'd like to see our revenue increase quite a bit. Because it's just, this math isn't good. It's not a way to run this if we want to see results. So that's why we're always struggling. But I thank you for being here, but I also think we need to try to get a little more money so we don't have to be nitpicking if a developer wants to put a beautiful planter in front of their place, and that's their right to, but I think we need to find some other ways to address this issue.
Well, and it's, it's something, we got the council to redo the mural ordinance, and we certainly could propose some changes to the public art ordinance in honor of our 30th anniversary. Did you know that Catherine Huff was the first chair? I just found that.
We were just chatting
Okay.
over here. It's really an interesting idea. What none of us are aware of is if that would require a Prop 218 election. Our sense is that it would, but I've never had the
I don't think it
issue
did
posed.
originally, though.
Well, what it was originally doesn't matter. What matters is if, once you're where you're at, for example, our business license tax is ridiculously low compared to other cities. And yet, it would take a Prop 218 election to change it, and there's been zero political desire.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I
of
just leave it at
course.
that.
But as
Now,
what
but-
culture, though, increases the
yes.
increases business opportunities for so
Yes,
many people.
that's what I
We know
was-
this.
Thanks. You
this is-
finished my
We
thought.
can just find
Yeah.
that
Yes.
data. I mean, it's everywhere. And every year, California puts out reports equating, cultural improvement with the, better business for everybody all around.
And more sales tax
More
for Measure J.
partnerships, more
But I think
sales.
what we can do is maybe we could research that issue and get back to you, just so you know. Is it just a mere ordinance change that can be done under our charter, or is it something requires
I mean,
an election?
even 3/4% would make a real significant difference in accumulating monies so that every couple of years we can buy an artwork of something that the city deserves.
What's interesting is that most cities and states have a percentage of public buildings. 1% for art is the sort of standard around the country, the gold standard. But it's very unusual to have it come from private development. But it does mean that our first obligation is to help these developers if they want to put art and try to improve the quality of it. And if you have seen the sculpture that went in next to the Rowan,
No,
which
I
was-
haven't had a chance to see it yet.
It's fabulous, and it was,
Good. Oh, he just said he'd take me to lunch. So
whoa, that's pretty expensive offer.
Or did I add the lunch part?
Yeah, maybe.
I
But
projected.
it's,
I could tell you were, yeah.
But what's really sort of encouraging is that the developer paid probably twice what his reimbursement was for the sculpture, because he wanted a really high-quality sculpture. But his knowing that he could come to us for the reimbursement is what made it possible. So that's why we want to know who's out there, who is potentially going to do this. And if they're not, that's fine with us,
Right.
because we are happy to spend their money. But if they are, we'd like to work with them. So, as I say, it's kind of an activist group.
That's right.
Dr. Redding had mentioned in one of our meetings, as it relates to creative financing, and I'm not quoting him, maybe you remember, for those of you that were here, that there may be a way for us to get money from other places.
We aren't allowed to take grants. I mean, we can,
And you know that we have a new grants person, Harriet Barron, has recently
No.
been hired to help find grant opportunities, so that might be,
yeah.
you've working with her already, so you might invite her to come to your commission and tell you what she knows before you wait a decade for someone like me to show up.
Right.
I
But
apologize
This has
for
been a
that.
pleasure. Thank you very much.
I don't get out
Can I
very
say, can I just?
Make him take you to see the sculpture, though. It's really worth
And
it.
lunch.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jay.
Can I just agree with what Mara said, because some of that is what I said last meeting, that we can go through this money in an instant, and this will close down the commission. I mean, basically, if we don't have the information of what's coming in and who it's coming in from, it ties our hands.
Well, the other option that I'm reticent to mention is Measure J has kind of become the capital fund for the city, so.
Yeah, but that's,
Yeah.
that's a hard sell.
Well, I'm just saying it's.
Maybe not.
It's the,
We could, for the
it's
park
the
or
best
something, ask
game
them
in
to
town,
match us.
and
That might
you're
work.
right, there are enormous competing interests.
Yeah.
The list is in the hundreds, well over 100 million, so.
Well, we'll spend our little fund.
Yeah, Jay says, ask for 1%, just ask for 1%.
Yeah, we can. We can absolutely do that. All right, well, we better get back to how we're going to spend this money.
Thank you.
Okay, so Commissioner Pritchard, just sort of I think in most of these cases, these reports are the first time we're putting something on the agenda about some of these, and that we should all be thinking in terms of what sort of action we might want to take in May or June to make something happen or approve the whole schedule. So today is really just to hear what the subcommittees have been doing and not try to make any decisions. Okay, you're on.
All right, thank you. So Commissioners Yanni and Gladstone and I met to discuss more specifically an outline for a plan for the Virgin Hotel site. Site F, which is listed on the report, we basically have what's going to happen on that site in place with the babies that Michael Braun is orchestrating and the piece by Michael Bernberg, which is now at contract. So Michael is waiting for the check for the deposit of that to commence the work. We'll get an engineering report to the...
If you didn't notice, Russell gave you a copy of this report also.
Yeah, so...
Part of his...
So just wrap up, Michael Bernberg is getting engineering to building and code enforcement, and that's sort of the next step for him to fabricate and install with his contractor. So all of that's moving forward now. He's basically just waiting for some money, I believe.
Understood. We have his contract. It's in your packet, but from our processing standpoint, we've received it and are getting the appropriate signatures.
Okay, he signed it, right?
Michael Bernberg signed it, yes.
It's been given to the city clerk's office. The copy of the contract is in your packet, and you can see that it's time-stamped as to when it was turned into the city clerk for signature routing.
And how long does that generally take? Just...
Well, today is agenda day, so it probably is still with the city clerk. And they know that this is a project that is on the forefront of things, so they always try to move contracts through as quickly as possible.
Good. Okay. Okay.
So then the final pieces of Site F, which is the grit art pit, would be discussing preliminary information for doing signage for it, plaques, so one that would identify the site as an art location, and then individual plaques for Michael Bernberg's piece and for the babies, and then to discuss if we want to do, as we've mentioned a couple of times in our meetings, if we want to move forward with a mural component in the art pit, which my estimation would sort of complete the vision for that site so we could move on to the Virgin Hotel site, which is what we started to discuss primarily in the ad hoc committee about a week ago. So I have two parts of that, excuse me, because we discussed in general terms what Commissioner Gladstone, Commissioner Yanni, and I had as a vision for the Virgin Hotel site, operating with we as the commission sort of running the whole show on that site. If we could determine, working with the city, what is a clear step-by-step, easy process for us to do that in selecting an artist, approving the installation, approving it as a rental as opposed to a purchase, and determining, once we do the selection and the approval, if we are pretty much the only entity involved that goes straight to contract with city attorney and city manager, as the Michael Bernberg piece did, with the only other step being approval with the Department of Planning and Code
And the
Enforcement.
city council, if it's more than $25,000.
Yes, I'm thinking just more in terms of either pieces that we might do at a lower level fee. And certainly understanding that if we wanted to do on the Virgin Hotel site a couple of low budget installations that we could just quickly approve, but spend over $25,000 for one particular piece, then it would certainly go to the city council process. So in between the time that we met and discussed this and operating as sort of our own entity, orchestrating and supervising and running the whole show, we had also been, in general, we've been talking about hiring Warren Brand as a consultant to orchestrate the whole thing. So we've got sort of a two levels.
I should mention that this is this firm called Branded Arts, and they manage the mural at Desert Regional.
Right. Yeah, Warren has
And that's what they do, is public art projects. But it does have the beneficial effect of, for example, if you had more than one artist working on the site, they could manage the process.
Right.
And by our paying them a consulting fee and whatever the costs of the project were, they could then pay the artist, which would mean fewer contracts that have to go
Right.
through the city.
So basically, the two basic outlines because I had the opportunity, Warren Brand was in town for like an hour a couple of days ago. So I had the opportunity to sit down with him and have coffee. So that's the packet of information that's in front of you now spurned out of that meeting. So, and unfortunately, it was just me sitting down with him in general terms, so without talking about specific money. But so initially, the ad hoc committee, we were leaning a little bit more toward us doing it all on our own. But now, after discussing in concept with Warren Brand about him managing it for us as a consultant and reading through his packet, I think as we start to talk about money levels, if we did it or if we hired him to do it, I think we would probably have a greater reach as far as artists go, both locally, nationally, and internationally, and would probably get more promotion and more exposure from him, and certainly would be less work for us. We would still be the approval entity for any art that goes into the site. So just to throw out a couple of random numbers, when Commissioner Gladstone and Yanni and I met, we talked roughly about doing perhaps 2 art installations with artists that have existing pieces that would be readily available, so it's a lower cost. So figuring that those would run from $5,000 to $7,500 doing 2 installations, so $15,000 for existing art that already is around, and perhaps one site-specific in a $10,000 to $15,000 range, so $15,000, and set aside perhaps another $5,000 for other art treatments to the existing concrete structures that are already on site, and support structures that are for the future hotel that will be on the site while there. So adding 5, so that comes up to $35,000 as a possible budget item if we were sort of orchestrating the whole thing. I think it would behoove us, because Warren Brand and I did not discuss any money amounts, so I think if we were to bump up the budget perhaps to, say, $45,000, that would give him greater tools to do a bigger, better thing on this property. So that's sort of 2 ranges of monies that sort of come to mind. And Mara will sit there.
Does that include his fee?
That's, I think,
All
how
inclusive.
you're bumping it up,
Yep.
right? These numbers are just, this is what gets plugged into that big lump of money. So right now, we're just sort of keeping a running tally of what these projects might cost. But in order, I think that we should set ourselves a goal of having a project either through Branded Arts or just directly to approve in June, at the June meeting, because I think last year we didn't have a quorum to meet in July, and I think that's possibly going
Yeah,
to be
so I
the
think-
case again, and then the new year starts, and so if we want, so in all of these plans, just think in terms of
Basically, speaking of a dollar amount of what we'd want to spend that would be
well, if
specific.
it's if it's a contract for Branded Arts, we might be able to actually do a contract. If it's, okay, we're going to spend $35,000 next year in bits and pieces, we can put that in the budget. So we just need to know. So that's good, that's a good start. Is there anything else from the,
But just a question on, if we work with Warren Brand, just as an example, because we've got a little bit of information from him, if we do a contract specifically with him, excuse me, if it was 45,000, what is the process for writing the contract, and what do we stipulate line items on? This is to be spent on 3 installations by,
oh, I would think a whole course of, scope of work. But you might ask him how he's worked with other cities on projects.
I would recommend that we would work with him on one project first and see how it goes.
We could do
That
that.
would be my recommendation.
so one
And-
smaller project?
Yeah. Well, I don't know, we
Or-
can talk
or
about
this
it,
one?
but just a project to just see how working with him goes, if he is actually doing something that we need. For example, we had also chatted about this idea of, right now there's like a mural, like a pink wall around the fence of the development
Yes.
downtown
Put
as
down
part of the
by-
Palm Springs Palm Springs Art Museum Warhol promotion. And we were talking about this idea of maybe thinking about that as a possible mural wall, which would allow us to work with artists to just simply print on there and do a kind of mural series. See, I expressed concern that our best plans may still be thwarted by our developers' plans. At any point, they can say, we're building a building, and then we, may not be able to continue on with plans that, the likelihood of this is, we kind of see things coming. But still, I thought it might be nice for in between times, or when we're between projects, to think about like a flexible, low impact way to treat this area before we start getting advertisements for things that we don't really like. So, because that's
Right.
what starts to happen. And so it would be an opportunity to work with mural artists who we know, make friends with new ones, but also to work with artists who aren't mural artists, or maybe painters, who work
And
in
you're
film
saying to put it
photography.
on the fence.
Yeah, to put it on the fence and do it like a series. In my mind, that would be relatively low cost and low impact, although there would be project management to oversee that installation. And that's where, we have to figure out whether Ms. Henning's available or whether we should subcontract.
We might put that into the context of the 30th anniversary celebration. I wasn't able to go to the Warhol in the park, but apparently they closed Museum Way, which is the one that points towards the museum, and lined it with tables with things for artwork for kids to do, and also wrapped the whole place in pink. It was sort of like Christo light. But I think, that's something we could do in the fall, not the same, using the theme of public art, but that use of the space seemed to be very workable and, and doesn't require closing Museum Drive, which apparently would be much more difficult because there's still, there's the entrance to the parking and a number of other factors that the city might not be ready to try. But now 2 or 3 people have closed Museum Way, so.
But back to the point that Commissioner Gladstone brought up, I think we would like to see a mural program running concurrently with whatever we're doing on the Virgin Hotel site, to be an auxiliary to that, to the Site F, which is the Grit Art Pit, and any other place that we could find as a suitable place for mural art, whether it's on a wall or on sheeting that's hung to a fence. So I would like to see that have some budget discussion, as well as throw out a number like a $20,000 kickstart budget for just a mural program. just to
Okay.
find our
In our
support.
next subcommittee meeting, we can talk to some vendors about the cost for those, because I did figure out I did ask the guys who were installing who they worked for, so I have them
Okay.
written down, but we can just get a sense of what the reality is of how much it would cost to do something like that.
Yeah, but I think as for the commissioners, I would like just to start thinking about sort of those two numbers, perhaps as a starting point. 20,000 to kick off or to identify as a mural program, and somewhere in the 35 to 45,000 for temporary art installations, finishing up Site F, and then also the Virgin Hotel site. And then we can start the bigger discussion of what we'll have in the downtown park.
Well, and I'd like to see us earmark a significant figure for the downtown park, say, $75,000 to $100,000, in order to get maybe a Philip Glass or something of that scale. But we're going to work with the park designers.
Yeah, Philip Smith.
But, in making up the budget, I think that we should just make sure that it's a separate item from our other programs, because I think it's important that we make a significant contribution to the park.
Yeah, and I agree with Commissioner Schiffer that we should be looking at least 100K for that.
So, okay. So I'm taking notes because I will,
I think it should be more than that.
okay. I love, why not? Well, we'll see.
Commissioner Pritchard, just to answer your question in regards to process that you were asking earlier, contracts over 25,000 would have to be approved by the city council. But, there's a process to that, of course, just
Right.
getting it drafted and the selection process and bringing that to the council. There's time involved there, but sounds like you have a lot of ideas. Madam Chair, I have to excuse myself and
Yes.
attend another meeting, but.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're so popular. Thank you, though. And we do want to, have those two committees intersect, so see what you, yeah. Okay.
Can I ask one question about the temporary art downtown? Maybe one idea about it also is that and this goes into if places get developed quicker than you're thinking, but if this art might also move and be temporary in other places in town, like in our parks that need lots of help.
But yes, that's actually something we considered in the discussion with Warren Brand, which you'll see in some portion of the pamphlet today, that because we're not purchasing any of the artwork, it's merely on loan, it remains the possession of the artist, but they would actively look for alternative sites that it could go to and/or be sold,
Right.
various things like
And
that.
there is, because we were unclear about renting or, art, when the contract was written for Michael Bernberg, it actually is being purchased. And since it's on part of the Grit development site, which at some point will be developed, it could also look for another home. At that point, we could look for another home. So it's just kind of, that one is getting our feet wet, and we'll see. But Grit Development has been, besides doing the Isabel sculpture, has really been very generous with their spaces. And, the Virgin Hotel, I believe they're required to start construction by January 2020. So it's unlikely that we'll have the use of it till then. So, and who knows, maybe longer.
And perhaps more money.
More money from that. I'm sure they're still paying in money, exactly. Okay, Commissioner Merrigan, you want to just, again, this is sort of bring everybody up on what you've been discussing, but it's clear, there's lots more fleshing out to do of each of these things. So that's also, it's on one of these pieces of paper. Did it get, here it is. There's a 2-page email that Tracy sent. we're working from. Okay.
So we had our first meeting, and hopefully we can have our second meeting early next week. So this email kind of puts together things that we talked about and then fleshing things out more in some additional ideas. So I've just been, I've been running into people at different things I've been going to and meeting people, see their interest in working with us and doing collaborative things for next year. And of course, everybody is very, very excited. So that is really cool. Everybody I talked to is very excited. So you had talked about how Museum Way was closed. So that was what I was thinking, that we could close that whole section of Museum Way for that whole day.
I think that's possible. Originally, with Commissioner Yanni, we floated the idea of closing Museum Drive, which nobody's done yet, but it just, I think, is too many problems with it. But now we've seen that Museum Way, the only thing I would caution about is it's like cobblestones or whatever you call it. It's not a really easy surface to paint or.
I would be glad to share with you a video and some photographs I have of the Warhol
I'd
and the
love
Park
to see
Day,
how
'cause
that
I
came
think
out.
It was a very successful setup. It was unfortunately very hot, but it was a successful setup.
Yeah, I wish I'd been able to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great.
That would be great if
And-
you could maybe just
Yeah,
email them to us.
I can email them to Jennifer and she can distribute. And I also just wanted to confirm with you that it is on the museum's calendar this day. It's on the museum's calendar. So if and when you meet with Melissa at the museum, it would be good to really sketch out even a rough time frame of when you think you might be using museum facilities, and I see that's kind of already here. And so I would just encourage that thinking now so that we can just put things on the calendar and really confirm them.
And also, I noticed, Tracy, that you asked if Jennifer would start the process of getting the use of the street, right? So I think,
Will we be canceling the commission meeting that day too?
yes, I think we should. It would be a commission meeting, but this is going to be, you know, right.
Could that count as a commission meeting? No, probably not, because it needs to be taped.
Can you reschedule it, or is it possible to
Absolutely,
reschedule it?
absolutely.
We can if we want.
Yeah.
We could have
We
it.
may
a
need
week.
to, just it's so early in season, and that's
Right.
when we're kind of doing all of our planning. We
Right.
have follow-up meeting.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So-
We do have a September meeting, and we could have one, you know, like, we could have one either a week or so before this or a week or so after, depending on whether there's things that need to be done or we want to move on into the year. Okay.
So, so we had talked. So, we talked a little bit at our meeting, at both meetings, actually. So I kind of incorporated everything. And I've reached out to a bunch of these people already. But these were kind of ideas of close the street for the whole day and have a community art festival, to have it be kid-friendly, to have a lot of our community partners all over the valley come participate. So something like Cabot's Museum or California Desert Arts Council, all different types of communities, so we get a wide variety of people participating. And then I thought the whole thing could be about what, you know, yes, we're going to highlight our public art collection, which I'm calling the oldies but goodies. But really concentrate on what public art is, what public art means to people, and what people want their public art to be. So that was kind of my idea of having this, and it kind of is, it's part of like that mural idea also. It could be along a whole wall, is have this giant map of downtown or of the city, and have cut out pieces of our art and have it be like a public interest feedback loop. So, people can figure out where our public art should be. Like if we want to move, if we keep talking about moving the squiggles and everything like that, if we want to move things, maybe we ask the public all year, like, where would you like some things to be? And bookend the 30th anniversary by the actually moving it and having a celebration
They
of
did that for the first planning session for the public park. They had movable pieces that were, like a little meditation garden and a where should Marilyn go and everything, and people could move them around on a map. So,
Oh, that's cool. Okay, so that probably already worked. And then I thought the whole thing could be around art. Like, we could have food trucks, but it could be like you make your street taco. It'd be like some kind of Picasso painting or something. Just a cute theme throughout the whole day. And then I did reach out to Windmill City T-shirts. They were really into the idea. So they want to meet. And I had talked to Sarah Schneiderman a while ago, and then I reached out to her again. So all those groups are really on board with wanting to do something with us. So then we talked about having the celebration be the entire season. I said season, but then it might not be long enough, but we can always reduce everything. So I tried to just throw a ton of things at the wall. And since we do a lot of things for Black History Month, and that's kind of a tradition in town, I thought, well, why don't we expand upon that to maybe other groups that we're not celebrating as much. So then I kind of went through like the United States, what do we celebrate every month? So this is kind of the list of each month and what there are celebrations for. So I thought if we tried to hit as many of these or a good group of them, it would encompass our entire community. So we could get we could hit our entire community in Palm Springs and outside of Palm Springs.
I think we have to remember that as a volunteer commission with one staff person, we can't do these events. We can partner with people and plan them, but it has to be something basically that they're doing and that we can
Piggyback.
support. Yeah.
Well, so some of them we kind of already are doing, right? So National Arts and Humanities Month, so that will be our launch. And this this is just an idea. So Native American Heritage Month, I did reach out to the tribe because we haven't, that I haven't seen, we haven't really done that much stuff with the tribe. But also the Palm Springs show that's going to be running at that time has a lot of opportunities for us to piggyback off of.
Great.
So that's, since it's
Western, right?
yeah, so I thought that would be great because I've already met one of the artists, Porfirio Gutierrez, who's a tribal member from Mexico. He is a wonderful guy. He's an amazing artist. So that we could piggyback off, the museum is already doing an event with him, and maybe we could piggyback off something like that with him. So if he's already here, I know he does live here locally part of the year, then maybe he could do something else or something like that.
Cool.
Then I thought, we keep talking about the Palm Springs Art Show and the kids shows, so I thought maybe we could piggyback these 3 months where there are all these special events, and it kind of combines all of them into, not one, but, the kids have their show, and then the winners from that show go into the adult show, so they kind of follow one another.
I like that idea, actually, instead of having just kids that, are mostly seen by people involved with the schools, and then putting them in with the adults.
Yeah,
I think it's a nice idea.
I think that it was such an awesome idea. So that's the whole superheroes idea.
Which is also fun.
And then I thought we could do something with Earth Day, which could be really cool. And I just volunteered at the Palm Desert Art Museum, Palm Springs Art Museum in Palm Desert, for their Earth Day. And that was a great event. I did garden tours for the children, which was so much fun. But they had all these art stations, like they went through all these stations. It was a really great event. So it was a pre-Earth Day event, and there were these schools that are in an after-school program. So they they actually, there were no parents there. They bused all the children there for the day, and so.
Cool. So is your committee's planning to meet again before the next meeting? And I think at this point, if you could sort of use the format that Jennifer's used before, that's sort of chronological, maybe color code it, for who it's with. But I think we'd set our goal for having by June, Mara, the schedule for next year. So
Okay.
I think we're on track to do that. And we should just keep refining it. I don't want to keep us here too late, so I think that we should hear a report from Commissioner Brenner on how our consultant is doing with publicity and outreach. And I don't know if we can just show it quickly, but she sent 19-page report, with like how many people saw this and that and the other thing, and it just seemed like a waste of paper to print it. But if Jennifer can find it, she'll flip through it. Yeah. And there's a couple of key numbers that Commissioner Brenner's going to tell us, but it's sort of interesting, all these charts of like how many people saw things and stuff. So, okay, you're on.
Thank you, Chair Sheffer, and all of you bear with my gravelly voice today as we deal with our high winds and allergies. So a couple of months ago, we agreed to bring on Madalena Garza and her team. I want to go back and just touch base on some of the things that we asked her to help us with were setting up baselines and kind of, when we agreed to do this, having a way for it to be measurable. And I think one of the things that we all agreed on that we really like about social media is we can check our ROI. We really can go in and look at these numbers and know how we're doing. Well, let me say Madalena probably could, and unfortunately she couldn't be here. She had a death in the family and had to go to Mexico City. However, she still found the time to prepare this very detailed report. One of the things, though, I know that I feel we have to look at this really, though, as just a baseline. This is where we're starting from. So when I look at numbers like, for instance, for our Instagram account, we started at 0. So we have 152 followers now, which I think is great. What we really need to see in a few months is, have we grown that? And I think that's going to be a way for us to really gauge even better. So this report, like I said, is so detailed, has so much in it. I don't know what the legalities are of sharing it with all the commission and making it a public document. I mean, there were so many pages to print it, we kind of didn't want that to happen. But anybody that wants to know in great detail, I will touch on some of the highlights that when I looked at it, so her Facebook report specifically, into details of what days did we have more viewing. I mean, was there more men than women? What time of day? I mean, these are obviously, if you're into marketing and those kinds of things, very important detail. for me, just kind of being overwhelmed, and like I said, looking at it from the beginning, what I see is, wow, what a great place for us to start from. What I would like to do over the next month in meeting with Madalena, going back to sort of our set goals, and in conjunction with what we're planning on the 30th anniversary, set goals for us. Okay, if we're at 152 followers now, where do we want to be at the end of the summer, so that we can, first of all, task ourselves on even being better ourselves at sharing, posting, being aware of those things. And secondly, I don't feel like you're ever going to make a goal until you set a goal. So I feel like this report gives us the baseline to start from, and what I would like to do is at next month come in with what we have to set as our goals and put those before us, and also entertain at that point extending the contract. I think I have been incredibly impressed with not only her work, showing up, being really a part of the team, but also her, like what she said is, there's all these other things that we could be adding into this, and her being the social media person that she is, having her here again to share some of those things with me, because I certainly am not the person who is ideal at doing that.
Well, we could try to make sure she's here next month.
Yes.
And maybe she
At
could.
the Instagram, we have a very small report. The Facebook report was very detailed. The Instagram report, as I said, showed 152 followers, 31 photos were posted, 4 videos, 7 carousels, 42 media posted. We got 1,219 likes.
That's a lot, I think.
There's
for
an
starting
average
from-
of 29 likes per posting. We got 76 comments. The average comment was 1.81. I don't know what that is, words, minutes, thought. And average engagement was 110%. So I can read those to you. I can't answer the question of what does that mean. But it sounds really good to me. But I do, like I said, I always qualify it, but we're starting at 0. But I do think this is that great way for us to really see where are we going and our possibility of how to get there. I can tell you that in our Facebook, last week we had 2,240. Our reach was 2,240. The week before that, it was 1,480. So we had 151%.
And that was about the Isabel's
Yes,
sculpture,
exactly.
wasn't it?
And you
It
can
just really
see
caught
when you look
people's-
at one of those very clearly the day that we had the Isabel unveiling, the
And the
numbers. It's
video
one of those
and
days
the-
you
yeah.
just see that it just kind of goes through the charts. And I, like I said, I know that was one of the things that I shared and I got out there, and those all the things that we can certainly all do a whole lot more of, like things, types of reach. The organic reach versus the viral reach versus the daily paid reach. Those are important things to know, obviously. I think the other thing that I really want to spend time with her to be able to come back to all of you is really solidifying what kinds of things do we really want to track. I mean, it's great to look at all these analytics, but then you, like you said, you kind of get overwhelmed and you're like, oh, wow. Now, I thought the most interesting thing to me was the demographic of 61% male, 38% female.
I thought what was most interesting was that mostly older people are reached through Facebook.
Yes, I agree, yes.
It's become your parent.
Yeah,
thing, I know.
define older.
Just,
Well-
there were very few people under the age of 25 who were reached on Facebook.
Yes.
But
Yeah,
Instagram
they
is
don't
certainly
really are not.
taking, reaching a different audience, and then, Twitter, and it goes on and on. But I do feel, Madeleine can post on any number of platforms. What's interesting, though, is that, as Melanie said, starting from 0, we have a presence, and people are reposting our stuff. And I think, it's the beginning of a growing sort of presence. So,
And I'd just like to follow up and say, I think what's so great about having her is that she has the ability to not just talk about what we do, but about arts in Palm Springs more broadly, which was what that the commission can act as an advocate for the arts and culture in the city. And so that's what I like about it being kind of unofficial, is that
Okay.
we don't have to, and I know that we had tried to do that in the past, but really having someone who's clued into what visually has an impact and connects it's important for us too, so.
And she's also on a mission to, like over the summer when there's less going on, to photograph all of our art. But she, it's fun. She often has people in the picture or, sitting on it or whatever is appropriate. But by the end of the summer, we should have a really good picture of all the pieces. So, and, sort of current and with people interacting with them. So I think that's fun. Okay. Yeah.
I agree, I think it's good. I'm thinking about the budget for next year. Especially if there's an extension and, are we covered?
I'd just like to say that I'd be the commissioner that's asking for only 12,000 as compared to some other numbers here. So.
And who's right? Who's counting right?
But no, it definitely,
Just wanna make
obviously.
sure it's in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So, again, at next meeting, discussing the possibility of, she might even say, oh, well, this was something, I don't know, that's a conversation that
Right.
needs to happen, but we will come with a budget figure for
Right.
next month, as I think that's kind of all the subcommittee's goals are to be able to
Right.
bring that.
And I don't know that we have to do, at this point, the whole next fiscal year. But we certainly, I think, want to lead up to October. And then that would be another time to reassess it, if it's worth it. It's also sort of good to have someone somewhat from the outside, because she sees things, like what's interesting, and she's been interviewing people, and, some of the things she's just so, like impressed with. Like Desert Maidens, she just wasn't sure what, we told her to go to some of these things, but I don't think she really knew what they were ahead of time.
Yeah.
So it's good. And it would be great to see the pictures of Warhol in the park, because I think that's going to set kind of the standard for how you can deal with, 300 or 400 people? 200.
But they could have had more.
The one
Yes,
other thing, I do have to say, we do have a very large engagement at 2 a.m. in the morning. I'm just not quite sure what that means, but I did
Well,
notice that.
this is what I love about it. It's like buying theater tickets. You can do it at midnight. You don't have to wait for the box office to be open. It's good. All right. So, anything else for these reports? Anything that any commissioner? Let's go around just with comments and what you would like on the next agenda, so we can be sure, and we can have these 3 subcommittee reports again, and you have till like the middle of the month to propose something specific.
Excuse me, are we moving on to commissioner comments, reports, and requests then? Are we
Yes.
done with item C6?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thanks.
I'd like to start, if I can.
Yeah.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to say thank you for your leadership and having our backs.
I don't know about that, but
and
I'm
your attention to detail. Thank you.
trying to figure out how we can do all this stuff. Kind of challenging.
I have a question for the commission, and I'm directing it towards Ms. Henning. The food trucks for the 30th anniversary, we talked about that. Perhaps 2 food trucks. Are there any permits that would be needed? Inspections?
It's Village Fest night, so it may not be, no, I was just going to say, I'm not sure that it makes sense to have other food trucks, maybe water or something, but most people will be coming from a street full of food trucks, and I'm not sure they would want to see them, as it is, it's very hard for food trucks to set up shop in Palm Springs.
Well, that was on our list, food trucks.
Right.
I think it's not allowed.
It's not allowed in
in
general,
the
but
city.
there are stands at Village Fest. But, maybe we can have like an ice cream truck or something, I don't know, that doesn't,
Well,
like
just-
the,
Maybe we can get some in-kind donations so that people who participate can get an ice cream cone, maybe, down the block.
Just wanting to cross all the Ts and dot all the Is, that's all. It's on the list.
Yeah.
That's why.
Well, I think this is a very, like a wish list.
That's all I have.
It's just kind of a sore subject in Palm Springs, food trucks. You don't want to start that. Commissioner Brenner, do you have something you want to add?
No, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Gladstone?
Just that I look forward to hearing about, from Mr. Verada and our other guests about, seeing if there are ways for us to augment our budget
Here,
in the
here.
years ahead.
Okay.
Just one thing on that, I'm wondering if, when people pay their fees, if they can have a checkbox that says, keep my art fee. I'm not
Interesting.
coming back for it.
Or
Or it expires in 3 years or something like that.
yeah, I do think that, now, something like Asina, it's been being built out for years, and I think they're at like 360 houses, and they have room for another 300 or something. So that's kind of a rolling project, but I think that projects that get finished, like a hotel, and it opens, it might be nice to ask the city council to say that somebody has to declare their interest, within a year of completion. Because otherwise, I think we just assume that they don't want to do it, and we spend the money, and, or maybe we could say that we hoped people certainly would let us know if it's their intention before they finish. Again, Michael Braun, certainly before the hotel was open, he was already talking to us about the sculpture. So I don't know if we can, it might be worth trying to put it into the regulations.
All right, so just a little report on something I'm working on, speaking of Michael Braun. In meetings that I've had with him, as well as the art installations, he's been very enthusiastic about our mural program. So I was talking to him about specifically the Rowan Hotel. So this past week, I was able to meet with artist Ryan Campbell and Abe Liao, who's the general manager of the Rowan Hotel. And we pitched an idea for a mural on the east-facing wall of the Rowan, which is directly beside their vertical where their name of the hotel is. Abe, who is the general manager, was extremely delighted with the presentation. So he's running it through the design team with the Kimpton Group. We hope to hear back from him within a few days, and then we'll meet with Michael Braun, who is already aware of Ryan's work. So that's the next step in getting him on board to hopefully fund the entire project.
It's a very good idea. And I've been talking to Leonardo Bravo, who's the education director at the museum, who's having summer camps this summer. And one of the artists he's working with is Sofia Enriquez, who did the Desert Maiden portraits. And she's interested in doing a mural, perhaps on the wall, that borders what will be the public, the art park, whatever they turn out calling it, where Illuminaire House is right now. There's a, but the request would come from the museum while she's working with the kids to also do a mural, and that would be like in early July. But she told me that, first of all, it turns out she's 26 years old and she's just done all this stuff, but she decided that she wanted to do something new and challenging, so she went to Paris, and she somehow hooked up with a group of people who do sort of graffiti/art in the middle of the night on buildings in Paris. And so she participated in 4 murals. The police would come, and it would turn out that they were more interested in making sure that the artists weren't harassed by like homeless people or drunks or whatever on the streets, and that they respected each other's work, so like don't paint over it. This is, I tried to find out if these were public buildings in Paris or private buildings, but they're in areas of the city where people are happy to have something on the walls. But she just did this on her own and painted 4 murals and came back. So I think it would be fun to have her do something, especially if it involved kids, because I think she has a great spirit.
Yes, Sophia is an artist that in our ad hoc committee we discussed wanting to work with very closely.
Yeah, so I will make sure that that Leonardo talks to you also about doing it. But it would be great if they sort of sponsored it, because they're going to have her teach anyway. Okay, well, the one thing that I want to circle back to the idea of having a study session and a chance to talk to the park designers. We don't have to do it at the same time. We can do it on 2 separate dates, so I think that's asking a lot of people. Mara, if we did the park part for just part of it, do you think you could, I think it would be good if you were there when we were talking about what to put in the park. Is
Yeah,
that-
I'd love to be. I'm out of town April 26th and 27th, and then I'm out of town May 2nd to 11th. So but I will make myself available any of those other days.
So what about, shall I try May 3rd? Is that no, you're gone. 7th?
I'm basically available,
Unavailable, all right.
except for next Thursday, if it has to be a Thursday.
And my best days are Mondays. Mondays are wide open for me, which is a completely different day, but.
You can consider a conference call.
I can go back with them with, a series of Mondays. And if we can, I think it would be great to meet again at the Desert Art Center, because it's much more conducive. Let's see, next Monday is, let's say that's
Yeah.
a little soon.
Yes.
So there's Monday the 23rd, which would still give us lots of time before and Monday the 30th. Shall I propose those 2 dates at
Sure.
4 o'clock in the afternoon? Okay. And then there would be, the next one would be Monday the 7th, but I think that's when you said, yeah.
Yesterday,
Okay,
yeah.
so let me go back to them. They were very, they really want to come. And I had originally said, well, we meet on Thursdays, so I'd try those dates. But I will, I'll ask them for the.
I'm not here on Mondays, so.
Okay. But you could maybe come for the 2 hours if we, are you?
Those 2 dates,
are not good?
I already have meetings scheduled.
Okay. Well, let's see if they're available, because it really is just a study session, and perhaps Jay or someone can, we need to talk to them. Nothing's going to get decided. Okay, let's adjourn since we're just about losing our quorum. And then we can just discuss dates. May I have a motion to adjourn, please? No, may I have a motion to adjourn? Yeah.
To the next
You can read
regular
it,
Public
right,
Arts
to the-
Commission
well, I was gonna
meeting on May the 10th,
Do you wanna
Thursday,
read it
May the
off of here?
10th
Here.
at 4 PM at City Hall.
What am I doing?
This is what you're going to move, to adjourn to the,
I'll yield to the gentle lady from Palm Springs.
I can move we adjourn here, and then someone can second it. I move we adjourn to the next regular meeting of the Public Arts Commission on Thursday, May 10th, 2018, at 4 PM here in the large conference room of City Hall. I need a second to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
You can tell Tom how much he was missed.